version. It's sick. It's degenerate and sick.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Welcome, dissidents one and all, to a Sunday night broadcast of the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
We are back at our regularly scheduled time. We have not done an evening show in a while. We had some schedule changes this week, so this is our first evening show in a week, which means it's our first time with our producer Jake back in 1 week. So thank you, Jake, for being here. Thank you all for being here. A wonderful crowd to start this show. 464 strong in the YouTube chat. 280 strong in the Rumble chat. So what is that? About 700 of you here to start the evening. That's wonderful. It's great to see you all.
And we're not even unboxing shit.
No, not even unboxing shit. I don't know. Maybe people are a little tired today hanging around watching YouTube because of the daylight savings. I know I'm a little tired. It throws me every time. And it definitely threw me this time. It feels later. It feels like 8:10 because it is 8:10 according to our biological clock.
I'm not feeling it. I don't feel anything.
No?
It's not hitting me. I didn't even notice it. I forgot that it had happened until I saw like people mentioning it.
Yeah, I definitely felt it. The fall back definitely hits me harder than the spring
forward.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's an hour.
Yeah, it's an hour, but you feel it, the daylight. You know, I was out driving today, so I was working a little bit, and so you definitely feel it looks later and feels later, even though it's earlier. And so, you know, for whatever reason, you guys are all here. We're very, very glad you're all here. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button over on Rumble. Reminder, it is Sunday. Sunday means we have our patron Q&A after the show. All are welcome. Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers and paid Locals subscribers have call-in access to the post-show Q&A, but all are welcome to join over on Rumble. So immediately following the main show, we keep our same stream going, and we close down the YouTube stream and have an exclusive Rumble after show every Sunday night. So rumble.com/do dissidents if you want to follow us over there. If you're watching us over on Rumble, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change streams. It's all one shot. So everybody over there could just stay put. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously after the show, if you want to come hang out with us for an uncensored Q&A talk back, we take audience questions from the Rumble chat. We also take calls from our patrons and paid Substack subscribers as a perk of supporting the show. So that's what's on the docket for the evening. We have a lot to get to this evening, a real lot to get to.
I just want to issue a correction from the previous show, which an alert viewer caught, and I tried to respond to it. I deleted their comment. So in the I don't know about you. For me, I'd rather get like not enough sleep than too much sleep. That makes my brain foggy. So when we did
too much,
if I slept, like I crashed out at like 8:30 at night when we did the Friday show, and I woke up like 8, like I just totally crashed for like 12 hours. So my brain was very foggy, and somebody caught that I said the Platonic method rather than the Socratic method. I was thinking about one of my relationships.
As I was going to say, the Platonic method. That's another thing.
I mean, that's how you prevent pregnancy where I come from.
We've all been there.
Yeah, the Platonic method. But of course, I meant the Socratic method. I know for a lot of people, this is like
the process of friend zoning. Yeah. They call that the Platonic method.
And interestingly, it was Plato who first wrote about that in the Republic.
Yeah, that's a little known history. Yes,
and that's where the phrase comes from.
That's why it's so effective. You know, it's ancient wisdom.
That's right. I know a lot of people. They treat this as due dissidence university. So I don't want you all walking around telling people, well, when I'm trying to figure something out, I use the Platonic method. And then when they laugh at you, you'll be like, "Damn you, Lord!"
Yeah, he screwed me. He screwed me. Yeah, good catch. Good catch. Oh, wow. Now we're over 666 in the YouTube chat, which means we are at a I think that's the earliest.
Which, by the way, their tickets are on sale now. I'm trying to hook up Vin. My man Vin always watches the show. Yo, Vin, let's go see Maiden next year, man. November, a year from now. Yep, it's 2024. Barclays Center and New Jersey. I would prefer Barclays Center. He would probably prefer New Jersey. We'll talk about it.
All right. Well, 1 year from now is the election. We have some polling to get to as our first segment, but we did have some very generous super chats from Daryl Deachman before the show got started. So why don't we get to these? Thank you. That's good for a singing bowl, right? Right off the bat, or cowbell, whatever you have handy. Thank you. Good Daryl, I don't need to watch Bill Maher. I have a ridiculous brother-in-law who was right on everything, schmovid from what I can see, but just absolutely refuses to look at this situation with the same measure of incredulity. Yeah, no,
Really?
I notice a couple people in the chat like that. The Bill Maher is the ridiculous brother-in-law. He is America's ridiculous brother-in-law. He's the kind of guy you would treat like a ridiculous brother-in-law. Like if you're invited to a family event, you would ask, is Bill going? Because you'd want to know if he was going to know whether you... So the way that works is you would say, oh, when is it? Okay, Thursday. Okay, is Bill going? And if they say no, you say, oh, that's too bad. I'd love to have seen him. Yeah, I can make it. What time should I be there? And then you say, is Bill going? And if they say yes, you say, oh, that's a shame. I've been wanting to catch up with him for the longest time. I don't know. I got something else. I'll try and move it around. Right? You ask first and then adjust your strategy from there. But yes,
that's it.
He is the ridiculous brother-in-law.
America's ridiculous brother-in-law.
America's ridiculous brother-in-law. We might make that stick.
Let's pitch that to him.
We should pitch that to him. And Daryl says he wanted to apologize. I made a joke a few episodes back that didn't go over well. I don't remember you making a joke that didn't go over well. I tend to like your jokes.
Maybe in the chat.
I tend to worry about chat space, and so it fell flat. You guys are the best. Oh, did you not?
Character space.
Character space, right. Were you not able to word it correctly because you didn't have the characters? Okay. Well, I didn't notice it. So I don't know. I mean, nothing to apologize for on my end, for sure. All right. Let's go to segment number 1. Today is November 5th, 2023. In exactly 1 year, the 2024 election will take place, which means we are 1 year away from the most epic election night live stream in the history of election night live streams. And folks...
Oh, is that 1 year from tonight?
1 year from today. 1 year from today.
Wow.
And so here we are, November 5th, 2023. The news is not good, everybody. The news out there is not good, but there is some bright news here. This will lift your spirits a little bit. I think we can all agree this is absolutely wonderful news. Trump leads in 5 critical states as voters blast Biden. The Times Siena poll finds what the world needs now is Trump. Sweet
Trump.
Trump. That should be his theme song.
A cat was named Vagina.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like they're going to get it. Voters in battleground states said they trusted Donald J. Trump over President Biden on the economy, foreign policy, and immigration as Biden's multiracial base shows signs, of fraying. So first, let's just go to the numbers. All right, before we dig into them. This spells a real shitstorm for Joe Biden. Down by 11 points in Nevada. Ouch, right off the bat. That was a state that went blue the last 2 cycles. Trump has never won Nevada, but Trump well outside the margin of error in Nevada. If that polling holds, that's not even a swing state at this point. It's one poll we have to see, but so Nevada, if that represents the average of polls, that would not even be a swing state at this point. So Nevada, basically in Trump's column, according to this poll. Georgia, Trump +6, 49-43. The other thing to notice is Trump is in the high 40s in most of these polls. It's not like it's, 42 to 35 with a lot undecided.
Decided, yeah.
He's close to 50 in a lot of these. Arizona, Trump +5, 49-44. Michigan, we've done a lot of reporting about Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan, Arab population, rightfully disgusted with Joe Biden. 48-43, Trump over Biden in Michigan. Pennsylvania, Trump over Biden +4. Wisconsin, the only state where Biden has a lead, and that is inside the margin of error, 2-point lead. All of Trump's leads in this poll are outside the margin of error for the polls. And so those are just absolutely devastating numbers. This is now our 3rd segment in as many shows, I think, on bad polls for Joe Biden. First, we did the one where he had lost 11 points of support within his own party. Then we did the one where Arabs were 83% against him for 2024. And now this one, arguably the most important of them all, since these are swing state polls. This is where the election is going to be won and lost. Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, that's really the election right there. Everything else would just be gravy for Trump. Whoever wins 2 out of those 3, Georgia, Arizona, likely to win. Now you could see Trump, according to these polls, fairly significant leads in all of them.
Yeah, this story, Keaton, as he mentioned, I think on the last show, is like a baseball stats person.
Right.
So he's more the poll person. When you see these poll stories, Keaton's the one who usually brings them. I brought this because I was amazed by some of the information contained within this poll. Biden is only leading with people under 30 by 1 point. Trump has 22% of the black vote in this poll. Biden is only leading with Latinos by 1 point.
Overall, yep.
Overall by 1 point. The Trump's numbers on the economy versus Biden are devastating. It was like 58-37.
59-37.
59-37. And most fascinating to me, the majority of voters say that Biden's policies have hurt them personally.
Personally, right. Not hurt the country, hurt them.
Personally. He cannot win. He cannot win. There is absolutely no fucking way with these numbers that he can win. And this really does raise the question, do they swap him out? Do they really lean on him now to drop out? It just gets more dire as time goes on. I've been kind of skeptical that they're going to get rid of Biden. I still lean towards internal party politics. Biden's ego, he's not going to drop out on his own, so what the fuck are they going to do in the end? I think it's not as organized as the mafia. They're not going to be able to Sopranos that shit and just be like, listen, you're going to need to step out. Either your signature or your brains are going to be on this contract. They can't. They can't do it. They can't do it. So if you got this egomaniac just determined to kamikaze the whole party, what can you really do about it if he's already in office? It's not as if he's a candidate, right? He's already. What do you do when he's the incumbent and he refuses to step down?
Yeah, no, look, generic polling is actually favorable to a generic Democrat against Trump, but Biden is just an absolutely toxic candidate at this point. There's no doubt about that. Trump had a 28 percentage point advantage on Biden regarding young people's view of who would handle the economy better. Right. 28 points underwater.
Right.
So I had some stuff to read there, but you were very good. You memorized all those numbers by yourself, so we don't even have to go to the article because it's all there. But yeah, the big takeaway is in the headline. Biden's multiracial coalition is disappearing. It's crumbling. And that speaks to what I said last time. When you have Arab support at 17%, where it's never been below 50%. Right. In 2020, it was 59%. That drastic a drop is the thing that they could not have happened. The bottom just completely fell out of the campaign. They already had all of these factors working against them. To have that happen is just the last thing to go. It's the thing they could not afford to have happen. Voters also said that they were twice as likely to vote based on economic issues as they were on social issues, which suggests that the Roe issue might not be the savior this time that it was last time. Right? Now, look, the election's a year away. This can change. But there's no doubt one of the reasons why this poll was published today and why this was a big deal is we are now 1 year away. On this date next year, we will be sitting here counting votes.
Yeah, and even Democrats think he's too old to run.
Right.
I think it was something like 54% of Democrats said he was too old to run. I've never seen numbers like this, and we're both politics junkies. I've never seen polling like this, not even for George W. Bush at the bottom of his popularity. Did you see such just across the board in every group and every demographic? And what really shows you something that the Democrats have desperately been trying to deny. Friend of show until you got a hold of him, Thomas Frank. So, yeah. I'm never letting it go.
This guy's so triggered by what I said to Thomas Frank. I didn't curse at him. I didn't say fuck you. I said fuck the country. I didn't say fuck you.
But Thomas Frank is America, and you know that, and you know that. No, he said in the clip I really like of the interview he did with a French magazine. If you want to look it up, the title is something like "Why Hillary Clinton Lost Because she's a Working Class Voter," something like that. And he talks about how the Democrats, when he wrote "What's the Matter with Kansas," were very insistent that what he said was happening, that the blue-collar voters were turning away from the Democrats, was not happening. And he made the point, after Trump, they can't deny anymore that actually has happened. When Trump did better with non-whites than any Republican since Nixon, they reacted the same way. That's not happening. That's not happening. These polls are wrong. They're distorted. There's something wrong with them. They're outliers. Well, now you can't deny that this is happening, that you are actually losing people of color. And at that point, there are just not enough white Steve Schmidt, Nicole Wallace motherfuckers in the suburbs to make that up for the Democrats. They cannot afford to lose that part of their coalition.
There were barely enough last time. Yeah.
Right. As a result, the whiter the state was in this poll, the better Biden did. The browner the state was, the worse he did. That's why Wisconsin is the only one he led in, because it was the whitest of the 6 states.
Yeah, and Nevada, brownest of the 6 states, down by 11 points.
Right.
11 points.
Right.
Insane. Just absolutely
insane. And that's going to make it very hard for them to sell the Donald Trump's campaign as being driven by white supremacy line.
Oh yeah, no. Look, I mean, he's got nothing. He's got nothing now because, as you said, those affluent white moderates were barely enough to compensate for the loss in minority support last time. With even more minority support, peeling off this time, potentially way more if these Arab numbers stay where they are, which looks like they will, and they should absolutely. Then that's the ball game. Also, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that not as many of those white suburban affluent moderates are going to be there for him this time either, because they have stocks, right? I mean, they have an interest in the economy, and the economy sucks. And so, a lot of them are going to have buyer's remorse over Biden. So, looking like a real dire situation for Joe Biden. And we're going to go slightly out of order here with the super chats just because I caught this. We might clip this. Virtuoso says, "What's that, Russ? Biden's going to get Castellano. Don't get the channel folks." Figuratively, we mean. Figuratively, Figueroso, of course.
Well, and actually, I said they won't do it.
Right. But what he means is they might have a talk and say, listen, it's got to be Newsom. So here's a gold watch. Sit the fuck down. That's all we mean by that. But thank you.
Second prize, set of steak knives.
Second prize, set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. Thanks, Patrick Donahue, for the €10. In times like these, I'm very proud to be Irish. We always stand with the oppressed, given our history. We are unequivocal in our disdain for colonialist fascism. I'm going to butcher that if I go to say it. I know what you're going for there, but you
can't just fuck it. You can't just Erin go brah. That we can say.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We know that one. That's an easy one.
This one, this one I've never heard, actually. Our day will come. No, yeah. I didn't get to deep dive into this, but yeah, I think members of the Irish Parliament are trying to pass a resolution to eject the Israeli ambassador. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I heard something about that too. Unfortunately, so folks, we have 7 segments tonight. We could have very easily had 15. I mean, it was a lot of deliberation. Russ and I spent a lot of time on the phone these past couple of days to talk about what to do and what not to do. We usually spend a decent amount of time, but none like this episode. I mean, we had a ton to choose from this time. So we'll get to more Wednesday, obviously.
I'm pitching this online. This is the first Keaton's hearing of it. I think we should start to do, some shows do like a little headline roundup. I think maybe it's so much stuff coming in.
Well, that's what we started these as, headlines and main segments. And now they all just kind of became
and then
they
segments. Just became main segments. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Master Yoda, thanks for the Rumble rants. Noam Chomsky urged everyone to vote everything the Biden-Harris administration is doing right now. There is no such thing as a lesser evil. Yeah, that's right. When it comes to supporting ethnic cleansing, Noam. Yes, good point. Thank you for that, and thank you for the Rumble rant. Jake, our producer, is here to field Rumble rants, so if you got them, send them, and we'll read them, and we'll respond to them. Thank you very much for your support. 1,056 in the YouTube chat, 496 over on Rumble. Let's hit that like button. Let's see if we can get a record crowd in here this evening. So we thank you guys very much. all for being here. We're going to move right along here. We did a segment a couple weeks back on the worldwide peace protests supporting an immediate ceasefire. There have been many hugely attended protests throughout the country and throughout the world in the past few weeks, but none like this past weekend. Saturday, November 4th, giant Free Palestine rally in Washington, D.C., but more rallies of note all around the world. So I'm just going to play some video here. This is in Washington, D.C. The Answer Coalition estimated 300,000 people marched on Washington. Even conservative estimates were six figures, well over 100,000 people. Here you can see the streets flooded. This next piece is the clip that kind of went viral on Twitter. This is the time lapse of the parade stepping off that the Answer Coalition released. So you could see the people just keep on coming. Just a massive day of action yesterday in Washington, D.C. A truly inspiring sight to see. Like I said, their estimate, 300,000, even conservative estimates, well over 100,000 people on the streets of Washington, by far the largest pro-Palestinian demonstration in American history. So congratulations to everybody who attended. I know we had a bunch of friends who went there. What an amazing day. And as we will see in just a few seconds, they were not alone. There were protests all around the world. Yeah, all around the world. Yeah, as you can see, they just keep coming here. That's a time lapse from a rooftop, catching the crowd all day from the step off until the last step off. This is in London. This is what the great Douglas Murray called a hate march, right? They refer to that. Oslo, Norway. This is Montreal from a rooftop here.
Yeah, Jimmy tweeted out a picture saying, look at all those anti-Semites.
Yeah, right, exactly. This is Berlin. And this is despite the police cracking down on the protests. Look at that. As literally as far as the eye can see. So obviously inspiring to see that, people are not being intimidated and they're not being silenced. They are getting out there and making their voices heard, and the needle does seem to be moving. This I threw in at the end, the smallest of them all, but I would say last but not least, but this is in Israel. So these are some peace protesters in Israel. So obviously not the kind of crowd we'd want to see, but I thought I would throw that in there as well. So
hey, as we'll see later, they got to worry about getting a beat down from the IDF.
I know, that great bastion of Western democracy over there, liberal values in practice.
It's the Greek ideal.
Yes, the Greek ideal. The Greek ideal. Well, yeah, I mean, look, just an amazing day of action yesterday. Congratulations to everyone who went out. And if you are able to find a rally near you, it's really important that you go and that you make your face known. Like I said, it is starting to move the needle now. Obviously, Common Dreams reports amid public outcry over Gaza carnage, 13 senators call for, quote, cessation of hostilities. Now, we're going to get into this in a little while because we're doing a segment on Bernie Sanders later. But the semantic games that are being played here between cessation of hostilities, humanitarian pause, and ceasefire, it really makes I feel like the humanitarian pause is the new affordable and accessible out of the Democratic Party, right?
It's a Jackie Mason routine. If you
exactly.
want to pause, if you want a ceasefire, you don't quite want a ceasefire, you don't quite want an end to hostilities, you call for a little bit of momentary breathing space. It's why don't you just call for a ceasefire? Like they have to be dragged kicking and screaming. They're going to. By next week, other people are going to join Dick Durbin because from what I can see, these protests are not going to stop. And those things do scare them.
They do. They do. Common Dreams reports as mass protests and polling, not just protests, but polling, demonstrate the wide gap between the United States government's support for Israel's massacre of civilians in Gaza and the public's views on the Israel-Hamas war, with thousands of Palestinian rights supporters demanding a ceasefire. 13 Democratic senators appeared to be swayed by the public pressure late Thursday when they called for a cessation of hostilities. Ed Markey, Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, Dick Durbin, Jeff Merkley, Tammy Duckworth, Peter Welch, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Chris Van Hollen, Tina Smith, Chris Murphy, and Jean Shaheen joining. Notably absent from that list, obviously, Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders put out a video yesterday calling for a pause. So again, there's cessation of hostilities, there's a pause, and then there's a ceasefire. The only person who I know of who on record said they wanted a ceasefire was Dick Durbin, who was asked directly about that on CNN. But even he did not make those concerns known to the presidents. And so it's just incredible to see this outpouring of sentiments and see not just that sentiment reflected in the streets, but in the polls. 66% overall want a ceasefire. Overall. That's factoring in Democrats, Republicans, independents, and yet you have nobody in the Senate calling for a ceasefire, except Dick Durbin doing it very meekly when asked about it and not relaying that wish to Joe Biden himself. And then you have 13 of them saying, well, we want a pause in hostilities. I think what the difference
Profiles encourage.
I think the difference is that a ceasefire means basically we're going to end the violence until the status quo changes, until somebody steps out of line and starts it again. Whereas a pause means, okay, Israel pause the bombing for us to get food in there, for us to get some people out of there, for us to maybe free the hostages, get some of the foreign nationals out, and then go back to bombing them. So the humanitarian pause is really not the right demand at all. Even a ceasefire, unless it is an indefinite ceasefire, meaning a permanence until obviously something happens, which it always does, but a permanent status quo end to this just horrific bombardment of a civilian population. But obviously, I mean, everybody watching this surely by now can tell that the needle has moved quite a long ways. Well, and that's in large part thanks to everybody who's gotten out there.
And you can see the Zionists are getting increasingly desperate. I mean, from what I can see on social media, a lot of them have fallen silent. Like a lot of them, I believe, are starting to think about how this is going to look on their social media history one day. I feel like some of them are starting to think about what they're going to have to answer for if they keep opening their big fucking mouths. Then you got some others who, are just in the fray. I saw somebody talking about how Nelson Mandela didn't believe it was apartheid, what was going on in Israel. Now, I can't speak to that, but Human Rights Watch does, the United Nations does, Amnesty International does. Most of the world does. I'm not sure, and I'm not even sure if that's true. I'm not sure if Mandela was trying to be diplomatic in a moment and he was couching his language. I'm not sure. But I saw somebody claiming that. Now, that's desperate. When you are trying to drag up the name of Nelson Mandela to argue Israel is not an apartheid state, that's a desperation move. So it's encouraging. And in keeping with the little Ryan Long piece that we showed, I'm particularly keyed into the arts. Those people are not saying shit. You got like a few Jewish artists here and there who are like rabidly Zionist and willing to risk their career, and they keep jumping up and saying shit, and they're getting no support. None. So it's encouraging. It's very different from what happened with Ukraine for reasons that my next article is going to explore.
Yeah. And speaking of Ukraine is up next, but first we'll go to a couple super chats. James Vanderzanden, thanks for the $4.99. When civilian lives are on the line, one either supports a ceasefire or they support civilian deaths. This isn't complicated. Yes, exactly. 100%. Simple as that. I agree. Biden, thanks for the 99 cents. We appreciate that very, very much. Dan Richmond, thanks for the $5. Russell, I'm coming up for Maiden in Brooklyn next November.
Oh,
Probably
damn.
getting a suite at Barclays. You are cordially invited. Look at that. Dan
Oh, snap.
Beautiful.
Snap.
Look at that.
You got it going like that.
Russell's got a date. In 1 year. 1 year. We just got to hope the world lasts long enough for you to cash in on that.
It's like the Millennium Falcon. You hear that, baby? Hold together.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's see if we got a, here we go, keeper tracking for $1. Russell, I hope you're not suggesting doing like RBN and having 15 to 30 minutes of filler before you guys come on. Well, they play some old clips. We all have our way of letting the crowd file in, because the problem is the YouTube notifications don't go out right away, and the Rumble notifications tend to be even slower. So if you start right when you start the stream, 90% of your audience is going to miss the first 20 minutes of the show. So that's why we do it that way. No, but this way, you guys have time to plan ahead.
Yeah. What do you think? We want to talk about what we did today? Yeah. So a lot of people in the chat are disputing this claim that I saw. Like I said, I didn't have time.
Yeah, I never heard
dive into
I
it.
never heard that.
I saw a Zionist claiming Nelson Mandela as saying that Israel wasn't an apartheid state. I find that hard to believe. So somebody else in the chat said he was very pro PLO. That I would think is more likely.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't heard any of that, so I couldn't speak to that. But
Well, now, like an idiot. See, I have, if you're like me, you probably have less and less places that you can listen in on shitlibs because you answered them too many times.
Right.
So the Nelson Mandela thing I had to answer, so now I'm blocked. So I can't even go back and find the article.
You can't vet the information. All right.
You know what I'm talking about. It's like you resist, and then something is just too far above the line of decency for you, and you have to respond to it.
Right, and you have to bite. Sometimes you have to bite. No, indeed, I get it. I get it.
That's a good question. I listened to like a little concert footage. I mean, not like back in the day.
Alrighty. Up next is Ukraine. Pretty devastating report by NBC here. U.S. and European officials broach topic of peace negotiations with Ukraine, sources say. The conversations have included very broad outlines of what Ukraine might need to give up to reach a deal with Russia. Okay, so this is November 5th. The war started February of last year. So it's been, 20 months of slaughter, of violence, of destruction. Hundreds of thousands killed. Over 500,000 between deaths and injuries. All to get to where we said we were going to get to at the very beginning of this conflict. U.S. and European officials have begun quietly talking to the Ukrainian government about what possible peace negotiations with Russia might entail to end the war, according to one current senior U.S. official and one former senior U.S. official familiar with the discussions. The conversations have included very broad outlines of what Ukraine might need to give up to reach a deal, the officials said. Some of the talks, which officials described as delicate, took place last month during a meeting of representatives from more than 50 nations supporting Ukraine, including NATO members, known as the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, the officials said. The discussions are an acknowledgement of the dynamics militarily on the ground in Ukraine and politically in the U.S. and Europe, officials said. They began amid concerns among U.S. and European officials that the war has reached a stalemate and about the ability to continue providing aid to Ukraine, officials said. Biden administration officials are also worried that Ukraine is running out of forces while Russia has a seemingly endless supply.
Oh, really? Do they?
Right?
Do they?
It's almost like you can't win a war of attrition against the largest country in the world, which is what we said as pretty much know-nothings on the subject when the war started. I knew next to nothing. Like I said, I'm a millennial. I'm a 9/11 Mideast war kid. I wasn't versed in this stuff. I didn't know what the hell was going on between Russia and Ukraine when it sounded like Russia was going to invade. I had to learn very quickly on the spot, but not knowing much of anything at all, I said at the very beginning, the deal that gets made to settle this war is going to look very much like the deal on the table right now, meaning February of last year, and that all of this death is going to be a waste. What did Jeremy Corbyn say? A guy who, also branded an anti-Semite for believing in the dignity and humanity of people in Gaza and the West Bank. What did that lunatic say? He said, all wars end in diplomacy, so why don't we skip the killing part and go straight to the talking part? Ridiculous, lunatic, idiot, Putin puppet. Well, now here we are, almost 2 years later. Ukraine is also struggling with recruiting and has recently seen public protests about some of Zelensky's open-ended conscription requirements. They're taking people in their 50s now to fight on the front lines of Ukraine. They're running out of people. Russia was never going to run out of people. Why? Because if you look at a map, you see the size of Russia and the size of Ukraine. Anybody who has any sense of proportionality, you don't have to know history. You just have to know size, shapes. My child probably could have told you Russia was going to win because they could see how big Russia is and how small Ukraine is next to it.
Anyone who has ever played a game of Risk could have told you how this was going to end.
Exactly. And there is unease in the U.S. government, with how much less public attention the war in Ukraine has garnered since the Israel-Hamas war began nearly a month ago, the officials said. Officials fear that shift could make securing additional aid for Kiev more difficult. Last slide on this article here. Some U.S. military officials have privately begun using the term stalemate to describe the current battle in Ukraine.
And I just want to insert, I don't know if you grabbed that graphic. I sent it to you kind of at the last minute. I didn't even realize this. Russia has taken 18% of Ukraine.
Yes.
That's not even a stalemate. I mean, where I come from, we call that winning. Aren't you winning if you've taken 18% of the enemy's territory?
Yeah, well, eastern Ukraine is now pretty much under Russian control. And since then, obviously, because that was done relatively early on, within the past year or so, the front line has barely moved. I believe it was Glenn Greenwald who tweeted that out. I'm sure others did too, but I think his tweet got out there a lot, showing a graphic of the front lines between Russia and Ukraine. They've pretty much not moved in the last year. Because don't forget, the war is over, or almost, 2 years old right now. So they have begun using the term stalemate to describe the current battle, with some saying it may come down to which side can maintain a military force the longest. Again, obviously, anybody could have told you the Russians were going to be able to outlast Ukraine. Neither side is making large strides on the battlefield, which some U.S. officials now describe as a war of inches. Officials also have privately said Ukraine likely only has until the end of the year or shortly thereafter before more urgent discussions about peace negotiations should begin. U.S. officials have shared their views on such a timeline with European allies, officials said. Any decisions about negotiations are up to Ukraine, Adrian Watson, spokesperson for the NSC, said in a statement. We are focused on continuing to stand strongly in support of Ukraine as they defend their freedom and independence against Russian aggression. An administration official also noted that the U.S. has participated with Ukraine in discussion of its peace summit framework, but said the White House is not aware of any other conversations with Ukraine about negotiations at the moment. So obviously there's been reporting by Seymour Hersh that Zelensky and his top aides have made off pretty well, siphoning off a lot of this aid money. Even if you don't believe in that reporting, one thing we certainly know for sure, and it was
in the report this week. That we covered.
Oh yeah.
Who did that article? Was that Politico? It was Politico.
Yeah, I think so.
The article that the people that the anonymous sources they talked to said they're robbing this blind. I mean, not those exact words, but something to that effect.
Right. Yeah, so no, there's been a lot of reporting on that. Even if you don't believe any of that, or even if you dismiss all of that as insignificant, what we know, we've done segments on this in the past. We've heard earnings calls from Northrop Grumman, Raytheon. The earnings for the defense contractors have been massive. They are the only ones who end up winning these wars. This is what I said. This is like deja vu from February of 2022 when we were just a little Facebook show. I said the only people who are going to make out are the people who profit off of funding the war. Everyone else loses. There's not going to be a settlement in the end that is much different from Russia's original terms, which are neutral Ukraine, no NATO for Ukraine, Russian recognition of Crimea, which they have, and independence for the separatist regions, which now it looks like Russia may be able to just claim those regions
They're
outright.
just going to pull it in. Right.
And so what did they get for all of this? What did they get for all of this? Maybe Zelensky's wife got some nice new wardrobe. But other than that, this has been an absolute disaster, a tragic, unthinkably tragic disaster for who? For the Ukrainian people, which is why we said from day one, the pro-Ukrainian position was always to call for a peace deal. Ukrainian meaning the people of Ukraine, the ordinary people of Ukraine who should not have to pay for the crimes of NATO and the West, or for whatever grift the Ukrainian government has going. So there you have it. Now, almost 2 years later, and one more war later, obviously, they're saying, hey, you know what? Maybe time to wrap this up. Unbelievable.
Yeah, the Ukrainian people were just fed into a meat grinder for the profit of the military-industrial complex and for Zelensky and the people around him to enrich themselves on U.S. aid. Anybody with any sense was saying this from the beginning. Anybody who knew anything about Russian history, and even people who don't, as you say, you were a Desert Storm Iraq war kid, so that was more your focus.
Right.
Yeah, like of course, Russia was like the big bad guy, so yeah, Xers had a fascination with Russia, particularly if you were history inclined. But Jesus fucking Christ, man, you people never heard of Stalingrad? Nobody ever read about Napoleon's campaign? Jesus, like what did you think was going to happen? Just numerically, the idea that Ukraine could win this war was always patently absurd. Russia had too much at stake to give up. And given that, they were always going to win a war of attrition, inevitably, even if they fought it badly. I was talking to somebody just last week who still was saying, wow, Putin didn't know what he got into. Because they're so fucking brainwashed by their corporate media. And this is what's most frustrating about this. You know these stupid motherfuckers are just going to go along with the next narrative. Do you never learn? Do these people never learn? Fucking no WMDs. Trump's never going to be president, right? Like, do they never learn? Oh, yeah, no, Ukraine's got this. They got this. And they'll go along with whatever the next narrative is.
Yeah, no, they will go along, obviously, and, obviously this now, Israel-Hamas is the next front, and they're having a tougher time selling this one than they did.
That's what's
for
interesting.
Precisely the reason I've been talking about, which is that, it took some knowledge and some insight to get Ukraine right. Because you had to know a little bit of the history, you had to have a certain instinct, you had to have a certain sort of skepticism about you, right? It wasn't obvious for everyone to see, whereas now the images coming out of Gaza just make it so obvious. Anybody can see what is going on here.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. This is why people who, not just the populist left, populist right, this is going to come up, I think, a bit in the Bill Maher segment. Very, very often, the reason I think a lot of people on the left will tell you it's easier to have a discussion with somebody on the right than it is to have a discussion with a liberal. Because very often those people, at least the kinds of people on the right we'd be talking to, which are not going to be Mitt Romney kind of people on the right, they have the right analysis of what's wrong with the country. We differ in solutions. We differ in where you go with that. If you look at the line of bullshit that people swallowed on this, I mean, it's so incredibly misguided. Like, you can't even begin to work with that. Because if you look at what the Tucker Carlson critique of Ukraine was, it was the same critique. Like, this is a boondoggle. This is just to enrich defense contractors. And in the end, this is terrible for the Ukrainian people. What about these poor fucking people? There was the whole, they were going to sit down and do a peace deal. This is very rarely discussed. And Boris Johnson was sent there on a mission to basically tell him, no, don't make peace. And now, I mean, of course, it's no accident, like somebody threw a switch. All of a sudden, they're allowed to report on this now, as soon as another war front opened up to enrich the defense contractors. Now there's some place for that ammunition to be sold, which is another part of this we're going to get into.
Yeah, indeed. But I have to say, all of that understanding, all those red pills that the populist right took on Ukraine don't seem to have stayed in their system long enough to get the Israel-Palestine right.
Well, that's the problem. That's why we're not on the right. I mean, in the end, that's why, because their solutions are batshit, and you see what the difference is between you and them whenever shit like this comes up. Exactly. That's the difference between us. That's why we're not a united front, which I will always say, hey, where we agree, we can work together. The whole, you can't work with them, that's not how politics works. I'm sorry. There just aren't enough of us to win any battle on our own. So you have got to work with them when you agree. But never forget that you're not the same. Just because you hate the libs so much and they're so fucking repulsive and impossible, don't forget, these are not your coalition either.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Dore quotes the Frederick Douglass saying quite a bit. What is it? I will partner with anyone to do good and no one to do harm. Right.
That's it.
I mean, that's what it is.
That's it.
That's as far as you take it.
Well, you look at like Douglas Murray, who I've name checked on the show. Some people got upset about it because, they're not, a lot of people are not able to parse these things. And again, this will come up in the Bill Maher segment. There are a lot of critiques of modern social justice movements that Douglas Murray has that I think are valid. But when something like this happens, that's where you see where you differ. Right? Because he takes what I consider in part a cogent and valid argument about the excesses of some of those movements, but he takes it to a place of like children of men, right? He wants to fucking kick all the Muslims out. Like that's why he's a conservative. That's what makes him right wing. There are a lot of people on the left who agree with those basic premises about the West, but come to very different conclusions from that premise. Right,
indeed. Folks, we have a huge crowd in here right now, so please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button if you're here on YouTube. Please hit that follow button over on Rumble. And if you really want to support the show and help us out and help us keep going, go to patreon.com/do dissidents. You get a lot of perks when you become a member. First, you get your name up in lights on the show credits here where we do our little patron scroll. You also get call-in access to our Sunday post-show Q&As. It is Sunday, so we are doing a after-show Q&A on Rumble this evening. All are welcome to join and ask questions in the chat. Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers get call-in access to those weekly Q&As. So you can go to patreon.com/do dissidents. You can also go to dodissidents.substack.com, where if you become a paid subscriber, you get the same perks as you do through the Patreon membership. You can also go to dodissidents.locals.com. If you're watching on Rumble, there's almost 600 of you in there now. You can click that Locals button right under the screen right now and sign up either for free or as a paid member. Paid members across Patreon, Substack, and Locals get the same perks, and you really do help keep the show afloat. This is what censor-proofs the operation. We are on these big tech platforms where the rules are inconsistent and inconsistently enforced, and so the way to safeguard this show against an apocalyptic event is to become a Patreon member.
Against an extinction-level event.
Against an extinction-level event. Go to patreon.com, please, /do dissidents. It is super important and super helpful. Our Patreon members, our paid Substackers, our Locals members, they are the backbone of the show. No other way to put it. So thank you all very much. Russell, did you have something to add?
Is the rumor true? Did we hit 666 likes?
We've
had
true?
People try to trick us.
I know. Some of these people get tricky in here. Jake, let us know about that. Let us know where we're at. Did Jake just say, yes, we have hit it? So Russell, go ahead. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And we are over 608 in the Rumble chat. Well, we hit 666 in the Rumble chat tonight. Please hit that like button over there. All right, Jake, you can kill the scroll. Thank you, sir. Tusker, thanks for the $5. Curious to hear from the DD audience, how many of you know people that are actively serving in the U.S. military, and would they go to war over Israel? That's interesting. Food for thought for the audience. Yeah, let's see some discussion about that. There was already one video that went semi-viral on Twitter of a guy saying, I wouldn't go, and I'd rather go to jail for the rest of my life than serve this country now and go to war and die for this country now, or kill other people for this country now.
What, he was a vet?
Assumedly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that strikes me as that's who would make that. Cool Blue, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate it. If Trump would flip Pennsylvania and Michigan by +4, +5, Wisconsin would also flip. That's likely.
Yeah, if you're talking about 2 points, it's margin of error.
It's margin of error. Yeah, Biden was up 47-45, so that's in the margin of error. Whereas all those other deficits were outside the margin of error. Brent Yoendo, thoughts on Whitney Webb's Schmepstein-Mossad connection for U.S. blackmail? Well, this sounds like a Rumble question to me, my friend. You're a Patreon member. Why don't you call in and talk about this on Rumble after the show? I have not looked into that, honestly. And in terms of, is this rationale for why RFK could blindly support these fanatics? No, I maintain RFK believes what he says about this. I think he's
that's the impression
sick.
I get.
That's what I think. I think people who are trying to rationalize why he feels this way, I think that is a very old school point of view from the political establishment of his day, and he hasn't shed it. He hasn't moved on from it. I'm a very much Occam's razor approach to that question. I don't think there's any secret key to understanding where he's coming from there.
RFK Jr. is like the guy who would run for president in Twin Peaks.
Exactly. Yeah.
is just this guy who in the middle of the night is doing battle with a backward talking midget and a giant.
Scrapple Jankum, thanks for $1. Biden may be losing in the polls, but he is #1 in the chart. Yes, very good. Thank you for that, Scrapple Jankum. Appreciate that. All right, we'll take one more from Bonzo Beans, and then we will continue on. DD Life Hacks. Our cat seems to be losing the fights with the neighborhood cats and hardly goes outside anymore. She's not happy being at home all the time either. Frustrated, anxious cat. Help? So is she an indoor cat who's just outside, or is she an outdoor cat? Because if she's an outdoor cat...
she must be an outdoor cat who's decided to stay in because she keeps getting her ass kicked.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you have? Do you have any advice for him there? I've only really ever had indoor cats.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as somebody who lost a cat to traffic, your cat will live longer if she decides to stay inside.
How old is the cat? I mean, sometimes, a cat, they have their day. They have their day as an outdoor cat, and then it's time to settle down.
And they can die from shit that you wouldn't even think of, like drinking water that has antifreeze in it outside, like even not the obvious things that might get them. So you're better off. I was going to mention for Friday, I've got a nice, heartwarming story about a rescued sheep that was stuck on a beach for like 2 years in Scotland, so it'll fulfill the international requirement.
I like that. Oh, Paul D. There's an idea. Paul D says, take the cat outside for walks. That's a good idea. You can get a leash for a cat. They sell them at the pet store. So you can get a leash, and then so you can walk it around every once in a while to let it go outside. Yes, I think that's a good idea. Very good idea.
The Polish girl I almost married, I think I've mentioned that on the show. Yes. She had a cat that was leash trained, and we drove cross country with that cat. We were stunning people. We would take that cat, walk it through supermarkets. Damn, I never saw a cat that would go on a leash like that.
They were very impressed out there.
People were very fascinated.
Impressed the regular folks. Folks, let's move on here. Please, like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're on Rumble over there, please hit that follow button. Great crowd in both venues. All right, let's talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders. As we mentioned earlier in the live stream, and Common Dreams reported, 13 senators have called for a cessation of hostilities, not a ceasefire, but a, quote, humanitarian pause Bernie Sanders, the next day after this article dropped, joined them in calls for that. He put a video up on his Twitter saying that Israel has a right to defend itself, but they don't have the right to kill people, and so we need a pause in hostilities. Now, again, what this whole semantical game that they're trying to play between humanitarian pause and ceasefire is just crazy, because what we need is an end to the violence as the new status quo. And I guess that's what a ceasefire means in this context, because Bernie Sanders made clear on CNN today that he's against that. So here's Bernie on with Dana Bash.
One thing, Senator. I want to just clarify one thing, Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go. So,
oh, do they?
Yeah. So there's his answer there. Okay, no ceasefire because Hamas has got to go. Now, Hamas is an organization of about 25,000 people. Gaza's a population of about 2.3 million people. We already know the list. I don't have to run it down again. I will briefly. They've cut out the water. They've cut out the electricity. They have since turned some of the electricity back on. That was this big gotcha that a lot of the right-wingers tried to play. They circulated this video of people at one of the refugee camps outside, and you could see the lights on. Yeah, no, we know they've turned it on since then. They've turned some of the power back on since then. But obviously, we've all saw on CNN footage of Gaza at 8 p.m., pitch black, pitch black. So, yes, they turned off the electricity. They turned off the water. They have, for decades, controlled their movement, controlled agriculture, imports, all that stuff, right? I don't have to run this down for a 25th time for everybody. But obviously what you would need now is a ceasefire because, like I said, Hamas, 25,000 people in a population of 2.3 million, over 9,000 civilians have been killed, a majority of those women and children, we now know. And so the idea behind a ceasefire is, okay, you've had your chance to respond and you blew it. You've ended up murdering thousands of innocent women and children and men, but children, over 3,000 children, over 1,000 children a week since October 7th. That's why you need a ceasefire now as the new status quo, obviously, and that's the bare minimum of what we should be able to expect from progressive champion Bernie Sanders, who, according to Jacobin Magazine, this is an article in 2019, is the best candidate on Palestine. So, Russell, you found this. Do you want to read this text here for everybody and give your take on this?
He's the best. Wait until you see who the worst is.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting. And a lot of you who were Sanders supporters, I know we have a lot. This is going to take you back to those halcyon days when you thought that he was worth a damn, because there were a lot of articles around like that back then. Alone among the major presidential candidates, Sanders has repeatedly spoken out about Israel's violence against Palestinians. During the last Gaza war in 2014, he called Israel's use of force disproportionate and indiscriminate. He publicly condemned Israel's killing of peaceful Palestinian protesters during last year's Great March of Return. Quote, "Innocent people are being killed," Sanders told The Intercept. "Those are terrible actions. Instead of applauding Israel for its actions, Israel should be condemned." In an additional tweet, Sanders called the deaths tragic and unequivocally defended Palestinians' freedom of assembly, saying it is the right of all people to protest for a better future without a violent response. Now, I just want to interject. If any of you have not seen Abby Martin's great documentary, The Fight for Gaza, is that what it's called?
I think it's called Gaza Fights for Freedom.
Gaza Fights for Freedom. She shows this, which to my embarrassment, I didn't even know about this. They did a peaceful march for the right to return, and snipers shot at them. That's what he's talking about here. And while many U.S. politicians have rushed to blame Gazans for their own dire circumstances, Sanders has instead pointed to the prolonged Israeli siege as the source of the humanitarian crisis. In a co-authored letter to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo last year, Sanders decried the massive levels of unemployment and poverty in the blockaded Strip and reminded the Trump appointee that while Israel withdrew its forces from within Gaza in 2005, its continuing control of Gaza's air, sea, northern, southern, and eastern borders have made the humanitarian crisis there even worse. He reiterated his call for rebuilding Gaza, easing the blockade, and restoring U.S. funds to UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. So look, he was so good on this issue, right? He was so great on this issue. So what happened? How do you believe everything he says there and then turn around and be trying to litigate Hamas, which is a core Zionist tactic around this whole conflict? Well, those of us who were at one time, supporters of Bernie Sanders, should be able to answer that pretty easily. Bernie Sanders was always full of fucking shit. Bernie Sanders always took very strong positions on things that had no chance of actually being enacted or becoming law. He is the Democratic Party shell game writ large, where, yeah, we would do it, but we're short a couple votes. We can't do it here. We can't do it there, where they say a lot of good things that you're really going to get behind as long as there's no possibility of any of it actually happening. So when you see an actual case where these fine principles, everything he said there could have been in the Abby Martin documentary. These very fine principles, he has an opportunity to put them into practice. What happens? So we have a video from back then, which this is another thing. Even the media that we relied on, and, I'll give the benefit of the doubt that a lot of people didn't really know about some of his record. We didn't see videos like some of a video that went viral this week.
Yeah, so this is from 2014 at a town hall when he is asked about the Israel issue.
Is sending missiles into Israel. Okay. And you know where some of those missiles are coming from? They're coming from populated areas. That's a fact. Hamas has used money that came into Gaza for construction purposes, and God knows they need roads and all the things that they need, and used some of that money to build these very sophisticated tunnels into Israel for military purposes.
For survival purposes.
Okay, one second.
Yes,
no, I don't want to be interrupted. The question was asked. It's a fair question, and I'm trying to. Okay,
have the right to
look,
resist.
if you don't,
Yes, they did.
you know, excuse me, shut up.
So yeah, that made the rounds on Twitter this week. That was from 2014. Jumping a little out of order here. This is a
voter outreach there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is from a write-up in the New Yorker magazine here. Bernie Sanders, the most consistently pro-Palestinian senator, he once lived in Israel, was not eager to take a vanguardist position on the issue. Quote, he finds the Israel situation depressing. Oh, that's too bad. And annoyed. Maybe Peter Dow should be his next campaign manager. They can take mental health breaks when it gets to be too rough for them. He finds the Israel situation depressing, and he's annoyed that people are talking about this instead of the labor strikes, a progressive political staffer told me. Well, that tells you a lot about the chauvinism of the Democrat socialist sort of movement.
Yes.
Because the idea that this issue here, this genocide unfolding before our eyes, is seen as an inconvenient distraction to the really important battles of the day, which is the starting wage for a Ford worker in Michigan. I mean, that speaks to a certain chauvinism. And once again, to be 100% clear, we're not saying that Ford workers in Michigan don't deserve good wages. The whole reason we do this show is to advocate for causes like that. It's not that we don't believe in them, But what did we do? We were covering all that stuff to the minute. When this happened, what did we do? We had to backburner that for a little while because a genocide unfolding before our eyes takes precedence over that. And you have to be a Western chauvinist douchebag to not think that this takes precedence over that. And the fact that Stephanie Kelton here, I'm going to pick a fight with the MMT people. And no, I haven't had a chance to read her book yet. I had to return it before I read it because the late fees, they were sending letters to my house. The library was actually sending letters. It was going to be like the Seinfeld
They'll
scene
send
where
that shit to collections.
Where the library cop shows up to Jerry's apartment. That was next for me if I didn't return the book. But
I sprung for it.
Okay, yeah, Russell actually bought it. But the idea of building an economic system around the premise that your currency is the reserve currency, well, that is then built on the premise that you maintain an empire. And how are empires maintained? This way. And so that really speaks to a lot of the blind spots of the whole Bernie movement. They were sort of hidden in plain sight all along. But especially, during the Trump years where we didn't have a new war breakout every 3 months, those horrible times, we just didn't think of it. This just wasn't on our radar as much as it should have been. And that's on us. I'm not trying to make excuses. Like, it should have been on our radar anyway, right? I'll eat shit for that happily. But I'm just saying that's why it went down the way it did, and that's why his movement has such a blind spot when it comes to foreign policy, broadly speaking, especially this one.
Right. Yeah. It's really it's a teachable moment, because if you look at a lot of people who are coming more out of communist movements, that is their critique of democratic socialists, that all they really care about is their little slice of the pie. And they don't have a global perspective. They don't have a broader perspective. They never really think about where, suppose you have that prosperity to provide that union wage. Who's paying for that? Who globally is paying for that?
Well, that's baked into Bernie's pitch. We are the wealthiest country in the world, and yet we have all these people living in poverty.
Why are we that wealthy? He never asks that.
Right. Why are we the wealthiest country in the world? How do we maintain our position as the wealthiest country in the world? Is there an underbelly to that needs exploring? The DSA types obviously weren't terribly interested in going there as long as Bernie was leading their movement. To their credit, DSA has actually been very, very vocal on this issue. So I'm not looking to trash them in a blanket way, but I'm just saying, under the banner of the Bernie Sanders campaign, there was no eye on the ball here. There was no eye on the ball whatsoever.
Not at all. Even though apparently he said some very fine things about it, he never really made that a part of his campaign. There was, that article reminded me, if you remember, there was that dust up with AIPAC, because AIPAC was very critical of him because of statements like that.
Yes.
And then he didn't appear. The other candidates appeared before AIPAC, and he didn't. This is ancient history now, but I vaguely remember.
Well, here's how ancient history it is. AIPAC, fun fact, tweeted out this video. AIPAC actually tweeted this video out to promote Bernie Sanders' take. Yep.
Yeah. Well, he's no threat now. Right. Got his mind right.
Yep. Indeed. We got a couple of Rumble rants here. Pardon me. Winnetou Livre, thanks for the $5 over on Rumble. That Zionist lunatic Alan Dershowitz was on his podcast saying that American universities have declared war on Judaism. He really believes it. Yeah, that's a sick bastard. Yo, I didn't ratio him, but I did pretty well on a reply to one of the videos.
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about. How'd that do?
It did pretty well. And that's not a YouTube safe joke to make, but it did pretty well considering how vulgar it was. That wasn't designed for a mainstream audience. You know what I mean? That was more of a niche audience, that tweet, but it did pretty well.
That was pretty. Yeah, that was a bold one. That was salty. That was salty.
Yeah, salty, right? Exactly. We'll call it salty.
Literally.
Scott Johnson, how come you guys have great music and Jimmy's is awful? What do you mean, the house music, the countdown music? I don't know what he uses for his countdown music.
What does he use
more like
for
salsa,
countdown?
Right? I've watched some of the cards and the breaks and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It's
I would
subjective, I
imagine he just kind of grabbed something without a copyright, whereas Keaton is a music guy. He literally selected these tracks, right?
Yeah, I curate these. I go through these. I mean, I use the YouTube copyright-free library so that we don't get in trouble. But, yeah, they make, like, hundreds of tracks available. And so every once in a while, if I want to change the intro music up, I'll look for them. Like, the intro music for this evening was new. That was the first time I had picked this out. B, thanks for the $1.99. Love the Sunday streams. Thanks for the show. Well, thank you for being here. We wouldn't have a show without you guys, so hit that like button, please, and hit that subscribe button. We are over the 18,000 mark on YouTube, so thanks for making that happen for us, everybody. Let's see, what are we at now? 18,047. Can we get to 18,100? We have 1,400 in here. Can we make that happen?
Boom.
Let's see. Lloyd Trackwell.
20,000 by the end of the year or bust. Speaking of X, just before we get off that, so I did a poll on Facebook and I did a poll on X. Should I spend the winter in New York or New Orleans? It was like 74% New Orleans, so I'm going.
So Russell's going to go to New Orleans, sublet the apartment, rent a place down there, work as a tour guide down in New Orleans, and hopefully work with this show down in New Orleans. You know, hopefully this starts taking care of you enough so you don't have to do that much tour guiding. That's the goal, is to go full time with this endeavor.
Well, it's basically, there's only two places I'm licensed, New York and New Orleans. So
Right.
if I want to leave New York and work, I kind of have to go to New Orleans.
Well, those are some of the only places you need one. I know in D.C. you need one, but like in
you
Boston,
need one in
you don't
D.C.
need
I think
one.
Philadelphia, you need one.
Okay, maybe Philly. I don't know. I know in Boston you didn't need one. And a few other cities, because I don't think you need one in Chicago either.
Well, and my rent is going to be a lot cheaper down there than it is here.
Yeah, of course. Lloyd Tackwell, could Newsom win? I think so. He has a base. It'd be very difficult, but he's got a better shot than Biden, no doubt. I mean, Biden with these numbers is just a non-starter. But the question is, look, with the Arab vote, they said only 17% of them said they were going to vote for Biden in 2024, but only 23% of them identified as Democrats. So, like, you know, people see through what is such an obvious crock of shit, right? You're not going to just change the face and convince them to, you know, support a genocidal party just because you switch the candidate out. And it's not even that they believe Trump will be any better. It's that they have to. I mean, look, if you can't take a principled stand on this, then what can you? Right. I mean, how do you go into a voting booth and pull the lever for Joe Biden if you're an Arab American given this?
Well, you know, I was watching Greg Foreman, his channel's The Black Conservative, and he's been doing really good coverage, actually, on the internecine fighting in the Democratic Party. And obviously, as a conservative, he's taking great joy in it. But his analysis, he just dropped a video a couple days ago, or maybe yesterday, it was pretty dead on, where he was showing all of these black voters who are either not willing to vote for Joe Biden or actively are planning on voting for Donald Trump. And he said, there are a lot of these voters who will never vote Republican, but it doesn't matter. All you need is for them not to vote. And that's what's going to happen. A lot of people who would normally vote Democrat are just not going to vote. That's even what the Arabs are talking about in Dearborn. They're talking about just leaving that line blank.
Right. They're talking about an organized protest vote campaign, meaning they will go and they will vote for every office but leave the presidential ballot line blank.
I mean, I feel like this is probably Dave Chappelle's year because I'm going to pitch that to them.
There you go.
Hey, if you're going to leave it blank anyway, write in Dave for me.
Write in Dave. Apparently, Dave is a Muslim himself, which I just found out about a few weeks ago.
That'll be an easy pitch.
Indeed. McDougal, thanks for the $9.99. Evening, fellas. It's your favorite emissary of the MAGA delegation. Just a thought. Real America First isn't really on board with the escalation in the Middle East. Common ground to be found here. Well, get your boy.
Yeah, but Trump is.
Yeah, why don't you get your boy on board, right? Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to hear about his supporters. You know, let's see some rhetorical change from him, because so far I don't buy it.
Although I
believe
believe that
he said we're going to support Israel unapologetically.
Yeah, but I think he's onto something there. I think he's out of touch with his own base on that. I'd be surprised if the average MAGA person wants to get involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably probably true. Look, it's true across the board. 66% want a ceasefire. Right. Isabel Jimenez, thanks for the $5. Has anyone offered any number of Hamas who have been killed or captured? I haven't seen any of those numbers. It's funny. You really haven't seen that. You've seen Israel saying we are targeting Hamas. Well, you've killed 9,000 people. So if you kill more Hamas terrorists than civilians, which obviously you don't, that would be 4,500 dead out of 25,000. But yeah, no, we are not seeing any numbers on that. We're just hearing claims that we continue to target Hamas. Meanwhile, we keep seeing video after video, photo after photo, report after report of just horrific civilian carnage, which we will get to. We have a couple segments on this later on. I want to do this one though. This is a quick one, but this is an unusual one. I don't know how many of you guys use Meta, Facebook, Instagram, but Facebook is pretty infamous for its censorious nature, right? Facebook jail was the big thing that everyone used to go in and out of back a few years ago when I used it more, right? Very easy to find yourself in Facebook jail.
I am amazed I've never been in Facebook jail.
I've never been either. I just don't use it much anymore.
I feel like I'm being shadow banned a little bit, only recently. Like, one too many Israel posts.
Maybe. Could be. That's certainly a possibility.
But
Meta,
because I've noticed the kinds of posts, like non-Israel posts I'm putting up the last couple days.
Better?
No, they're not getting. That's why I'm saying I think I'm being shadow banned. Like things that are not about Israel, or like I know what gets engagement and what doesn't. And some of the stuff that is not getting engagement doesn't make sense unless they're suppressing my views.
That could be something. That could be something to look into. Because Meta, obviously, we know owns Facebook, Instagram, and also WhatsApp. So don't forget, WhatsApp is part of the Facebook universe. And here's a story out of The Guardian. WhatsApp's AI shows gun-wielding children when prompted with Palestine. By contrast, prompts for Israel do not generate images of people wielding guns, even in response to a prompt for Israel Army. So here's a search on WhatsApp.
To be fair, it does generate a rabbi holding marionette strings over a bank and a media company.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there is that.
Muslim boy, Palestinian. Look at the image that comes up on WhatsApp. A WhatsApp feature that generates images in response to users' searches returns a picture of a gun or a boy with a gun when prompted with the terms Palestinian, Palestine, or Muslim boy, Palestinian, The Guardian has learned. The search results varied when tested by different users, but The Guardian verified through screenshots and its own tests that various stickers portraying guns surfaced for these three search results. Prompts for Israeli boy generated cartoons of children playing soccer and reading. In response to a prompt for Israel Army, the AI created drawings of soldiers smiling and praying, no guns involved. Meta's own employees have reported and escalated the issue internally, a person with knowledge of the discussion said. Okay, so this is obviously a legit story. Here you go. The search up here, Palestinian, there, boy with a gun, top 4 images. Similar searches for Israeli boy surfaced 4 images of children, 2 of which illustrated boys playing soccer. The other 2 were just portrayals of their faces. Jewish boy Israeli also showed 4 images of boys, 2 of whom were portrayed wearing necklaces with the Star of David, 1 wearing a yarmulke and reading, and the other just standing up. None of them carried guns. Even explicitly militarized prompts such as Israel Army or Israel Defense Forces did not result in images with guns. The cartoon illustrations portrayed people wearing uniforms in various poses, mostly smiling. One illustration showed a man in a uniform holding his hands forward in prayer. So here's the prompt for Israel.
Yeah, a little different.
Little different. And then here's the prompt for Israel Army. Still a little different. Look, nice smiley guy there. Guy riding the camel. Woman smiling. And then this guy praying. No gun. Hands forward in prayer. Users also documented several instances of Instagram translating Palestinian followed by the phrase "praise be to Allah" in Arabic text to Palestinian terrorist. The company apologized for what it described as a quote-unquote glitch. Now, this is the social media platform that will cancel you for misgendering someone or making an insensitive remark in one direction or the other, right? They take political correctness very, very seriously on Facebook and Instagram. And look at this. Look at this. Israel Army. Smiley. Smiley. Israel. All smiles. Palestinian. Kid with a machine gun. Look at this. Kid with a gun. Incredible. See, this is what actual racism is, folks. That's why I wanted to do this segment, because you realize what you're up against. The worst racism has a lot of power behind it. A lot of power behind it. And that's why, especially in the early days of this conflict, thankfully not so much anymore, because thankfully the world has rallied to the defense of the people of Gaza and the West Bank. But in the early days of this, the reason it felt so hopeless is because we were up against this. We're up against this. And we're trying to speak some truth to this. But this is just abject racism. No other word for it. Done by Meta, by Mr. Zuckerberg, who will cancel you for problematic speech. Right? Look what they get away with here.
Well, and these are the same exact companies that will slap up the BLM logo that will...
Exactly.
I mean, not anymore, but that would before.
Right.
Before they allied with Palestinians.
Right, before BLM got out of line.
Before they got out of line. They're the same ones that will always have the flag. They're the ones who will do the big gay rights parade, cakewalk all month. They are woo, 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 waving their rainbow flags. And they don't give a fuck about any of that. And this is one thing, the conservatives are kind of watching this very gleefully. But it is one thing they're right about. This is gonna kill that whole thing, because it revealed how shallow and empty it really is in the end. The reason I like to do Disney segments every now and then is because I can't think of a company that more emblemizes that. You've got a company that is constantly, sticking, as South Park satirized, put a chick in it and make her gay, right? They're being sued in a class action lawsuit by women for unequal pay. You don't hear about that. Right? Oh, look, Ms. Marvel. Yay. Look how they're representing diversity. Disney emblemizes that, I think, better than any company on the planet. The essential shallowness and performative nature of their claims to care about social justice. When you look at what they're actually doing, it's a very different story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Pastor Morty, thanks for the $10. As a Christian, I understand our roots in Israel, but I support an immediate ceasefire and the people in Gaza to be free. I oppose the killing of civilians on both sides. There you go. Spoken like an actual
man of God.
Religious thought leader. Right, an actual man of God. Who knew? Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that. HROC. Thanks for the $7.99. Whether they've turned electricity on or not is irrelevant. That they have the power to dictate supply to the Palestinian population is relevant. Well, yeah, absolutely.
Good point.
Yep, good point. Janice Anderson, thanks for the $4.99. Social Democrat, not Dem Socialist. Dem Socialists are still socialists. Social Democrats are capitalists who want guardrails. Bernie and DSA identify wrong. Yes, good point. Kuzetsky Bassane, thanks for the $2.99. Appreciate you, my friend. All right, we got a couple of Rumble rants coming in. We will get to those soon. We also have a couple more Super Chats, it looks like. So don't worry, we will get to all those Super Chats before the night is over. Just a reminder, now that we have a big crowd in here, we have our post-show Sunday night Q&A coming up after the conclusion of the show. That is exclusively on Rumble. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you get the Rumble address down, rumble.com/DoDissidents. Hop over there and join us for the after party, if you will. We still got a couple more segments, so don't go anywhere yet. But we will give you a prompt. But just wanted to remind everybody, post-show Q&A over on Rumble. Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers get call-in access to that. So if you would like to talk to us in a little while, you can get the call-in link tonight by signing up, patreon.com/do dissidents. And while we have a huge crowd in here, we always have to say the best way to keep in touch with us is to join our Substack. Even if you cannot join as a paid member, joining the Substack for free is hugely important. It really helps you stay in touch with us. If we have to reschedule a live stream, or there are some live streams, like we did an exclusive Rumble interview with Norm Finkelstein because we wanted to be able to do an uncensored interview with him, we will tell you on Substack, hey, tonight the show is only on Rumble, not YouTube, right? So the best way to stay in touch with us is to join that newsletter. It's free, even if you cannot be a paid member. Please go to dudissidents.substack.com and sign up to the newsletter. It's just a great way to keep in touch with us. And Substack, of course, a committed free speech platform, so it's important to support those free speech forums like Substack. Okay, we got a couple more segments to do. Anything else before? Did I miss anything? Looked like you were going to say something.
No.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, this one is a heartbreaker, folks. As many of you know, I was at a rally in Troy, New York, which is near where I live, a Free Palestine rally, and I filmed quite a bit of it. I've dropped a couple of clips on Twitter. I will be dropping some more on Twitter, but this video is tragic in its own right, but it's also tragically relevant to this segment. We obviously know Israel recently bombed an ambulance envoy right near the Al-Shifa hospital. And so here is a Palestinian-American citizen recounting his last trip to Gaza and the state of his family now in the wake of this horrific violence. So this is footage that I shot in Troy, New York about a week ago.
Gaza. I was visiting Gaza and my family like 2 months ago, basically last July and August. I just want to tell you, the people there, they like to live. It's not like everybody thinks. But everybody need to know, it's no hope, it's no future for the people there. Basically, it's a big jail. Yeah. The reason I go there to visit, because my mother-in-law and her family keep asking me, when do you like to come to visit us before something happens? Because every year is happening a war, every 6 months happening a war over there. But when you gonna come before we die? Any airstrike, guess what? They died. She lost. We lost 16 lives there. My mother-in-law, my 2 brother-in-law with them families. So with her and my sister-in-law and her family, and the rest in critical condition. And they are in El Shifa hospital. The one now they want to destroy it. El Shifa hospital has a lot of injured people. A lot of people living into this hospital.
All right. 16 family members dead. More in critical care at the Al-Shifa hospital. Obviously, since he made that speech at that rally, as we knew would happen, Israel admits airstrike on ambulance near hospital that witnesses say killed and wounded dozens. So this is the hospital that he was talking about there. And this was the hospital that they said they were going to hit, or hit near, as they say. Oh, we neared a hospital. This is the hospital they put the graphic image of the tunnel underneath. So they basically forecasted that this was going to be a target. At least 15 people were killed and 50 others wounded, the Hamas-run health authorities said Friday. Footage from the scene showed at least a dozen bloodied casualties strewn across the ground near an ambulance. There appears to be some shrapnel damage to at least one of the cars on the scene. Israel said it had targeted the ambulance because it was being used by Hamas, according to a statement from the Israel Defense Forces. An IDF aircraft struck an ambulance that was identified by forces as being used by a Hamas terrorist cell in close proximity to their position in the battle zone, it wrote. A number of Hamas terrorist operatives were killed in the strike. We have information which demonstrates that Hamas's method of operation is to transfer terror operatives and weapons in ambulances, the statement said. The ambulance strike prompted UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to reiterate his call for a cessation of fire on Gaza, something Israel has rejected. Quote, I am horrified by the reported attack in Gaza on an ambulance convoy outside Al-Shifa Hospital, Guterres said in a statement. The images of bodies strewn on the street outside the hospital are harrowing, he said, adding, I do not forget the terror attacks committed in Israel by Hamas and the killing, maiming, and abductions, including of women and children. All hostages held in Gaza must be released immediately and unconditionally. Now, for nearly 1 month, civilians in Gaza, including children and women, have been besieged, denied aid, killed, and bombed out of their homes, he said. This must stop. A spokesperson for the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, who was at Al-Shifa Hospital, said that Israel was responsible for the attack. Well, yes, they admitted that they struck the ambulance, claiming that Hamas was commandeering these vehicles. Now, we're going to take a look right here at some video of one of the ambulances in this envoy. This is someone who posted this video footage to social media right after this happened.
والله يا عمي مرة في الإسعاف فرجوا للعالم أنت بخير يا خالتي
Oh, no, she's definitely Hamas.
عشان الاحتلال هالقد حيطلع يحكي إنه استهدف إشي مش مدني جوا مرة مصابة بده يودوها على الجنوب استهدفها
Okay, so see, this is why Israel is losing the PR war, because this is not 1989, where you could say, hey, we targeted these ambulances because there were terrorists commandeering them.
Right.
You make that claim can be fact-checked pretty instantly. Pretty instantly. This guy takes a video, shows no Hamas in the ambulance, a sick woman in the ambulance. And this is corroborated in reporting. Like, there's ways to get information out now. They can't just get away with this anymore.
Right. Well, this is why they're so desperate to make these claims about crisis actors, and these videos are fake. I had a disagreement with somebody about a video I shared where, you know, they claim that this person poses as different things in different videos. And, you know, for one, I mean, that could be true. But, you know, I'm a big consumer of horror movies my whole life. And I do not believe that Hamas has the capacity to show what was shown in that video. Even if you this person dropped themselves into the video, how do you know Mossad doesn't do that to discredit the rest of the video?
Right.
Because the actual horror of what you see in that video of maimed people, the greatest special effects artists in Hollywood you would have to hire to do that. Do they really have the capacity? And then to get all the actors and to get all the damaged vehicles that you would need, it's absurd, right? But that's what Israel tries to do. No, these are crisis actors. Hamas wants to, this is staged. It's fake. They're doing it within civilian areas purposely. And actually, if you watch Norm Finkelstein had a recent debate with a writer from the Free Press.
That was on the Comedy Cellar podcast. I forget the guy's name. Eli.
And the guy actually, this was very valuable because you hear this all the time that they use them as human shields. And Norm actually cited studies from credible sources showing there was actually no evidence of that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the human shield argument that never made sense to me is if they are hiding behind human shields and you have to blast through the human shield to get to Hamas, but you warn the civilians that they're being used as human shields, so they have to evacuate before they're struck. How are you not also warning Hamas in the process? How are you not also alerting the enemy that you're going to strike them? That just never made sense. Like, no one's ever made that make sense.
Yeah.
You can't warn civilians without warning the terrorists. It's impossible. If you drop a leaflet for a civilian to read, hey, we're going to bomb here next week, so leave. How are you not also alerting Hamas that you're going to bomb there next week? So what's the point? The point is to bomb it Kill whoever's in your way and take the land. That's the point. That's the only way it makes any sense. It's obvious.
That's it. I mean, even Obama, and I haven't dug into it too much, so I don't know how he parsed it, but even Obama is both sidesing it, which as much as we might say, don't both sides this, it's a genocide, even that you would never have seen 10 years ago, that there was another side at all, especially from a guy like Obama.
I mean, Obama and Netanyahu, you could tell, did not like each other. Like, you could tell Obama knew what was going on, and he's just such a whore, not to overuse the term, because Richie Torres got very offended when I called him that he toed the line anyway.
Who among us has not been blocked by Richie Torres at this point?
That he toed the line anyway. But you could tell. I mean, you could see in the body language between them whenever they would meet. You could tell in statements they released about each other that they hated each other. So Obama knows what's going on. Obama's not a stupid man. I'll give him that. He knows. It's just a question of what can you do to stand up to this. And yeah, Obama gave that. I think that was an interview he gave to Pod Save America that's going around now, the little video clip. I think what did he say? He says, there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of blame to go around.
There's blame on both sides.
There's equal blame between me, who spent 8 years as the most powerful man in the world, and everybody else on this issue. We're all equally to blame.
Truth is, Israel tortured some folks.
Yeah, they tortured some folks. Exactly. SB. The populist right is split over Israel. Leadership is pro, but an increasingly apathetic anti is showing in the base. Jackson Hinkle is a prime example. Yeah, Hinkle's been...
That's what I think. I can't see all of these anti-war MAGA people all of a sudden being gung-ho about backing Israel in a Middle East war.
There's definitely a divide there. There definitely is, for sure. Yassine Miller, thanks for the $10. Due to the elections next year, I decreased my support on independent media in Turkey, transferred it to you, increased the Due Dissidents membership amount. Oh, well, thank you, Yassine. Appreciate it. Happy to support honest journalism everywhere. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Appreciate you. Mark Slater, thanks for the $10. You guys keep me sane in this insane world. Well, thank you. We're glad we could provide you that service at least. Appreciate that. Thanks for the donation. George Gunnell, thanks for the $5. DSA sells union-made merch on their website. Why don't Due Dissidents RBN JDS? Love you. You know how long it took to find anybody who could print these shirts? That was like a months-long process, finding anybody who can get these done and have them print on demand, because we just don't have the manpower to be able to run our own shop like that. What is that? That's not one of ours.
No, I bought this at I always forget the name of the place in Midtown.
That's quite the hint you just gave me there. Oh, you don't know that one?
You know the place. You know the big place I went to cover
in the biggest city in the world.
The place I went to cover the anti-war rally with that shitty camera that we tried.
Oh yeah. Wow, that was a while back. Yeah, I forget.
Yeah, but I brought that place up before. There's
the People's Forum.
Yeah, the People's Forum, exactly.
Yeah.
I got this there.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, look, I mean, I will take that point, George. Honestly, if we weren't able to do merch the way we do it now, we wouldn't be able to do it at all. The only reason we could do merch at all is because we have a print on demand that just fulfills the order for us. We don't have the manpower or the time to, source it really any other way. But it is a good point. I mean, I would love to do union-made merch, and I'm sure I could speak for my peers in the space. I'm sure they would too. Tusker, thank you for the $5. Hamas has an extensive tunnel network they have built in the engines of ambulances. Yeah, exactly. Hey, should we show off our non-union merch now that the subject is brought up?
I think so. I was going to ask you.
Hey, Jake, can you find us the merch store and just share that for us, please, when you get a second? We'll do one more super chat, and then we'll plug our schmatas here. Cobra Commander, thanks for the $4.99. Hummus, our heroes, insane people can just label folks tourists. I see what you did there, hummus. Thank you. That was the joke that, you know who initially made that joke? The hummus is, that was in the Bruno movie, where he conflated those two. Jake, are you there? Susan Wojcicki just messaged me to say her feet are in the foot spa. Mine is regenerating and she has a joint sticking out the back of her ear. Thank you, Laugh. Appreciate it. Russell, you want to hit her? This is Menachem Dagler, father.
Very catchy.
There we go. So as you can see there, folks, you have our merch store. Jake, I think you put that. Are those in pounds over there on your ends? Do you do shopping in European currency? But yeah, there you have it. There's newdissidents.com/. Pick up some swag in time for the holidays. newdissidents.com/merch. We got the cartoon logo tee, the tank top, coffee mug, pullover hoodie, patch zip-up hoodie, unisex tees, and women's comfort tees. newdissidents.com/merch. All right, Jake, we could take that down. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. We got one more segment, but we got some more super chats and rumble rants here. Bonzo Beans for the $1 DD life hacks. How about urinating along the boundaries of our backyard? Works for grizzlies, right? I don't know that it works for grizzlies. I have not tried that myself. But if you got it in you and you can make it around it depends on how big your yard is. Yeah.
This okay, so this is what I used to work with a Russian guy who had been in the Red Army. And this is part of why my psychological insight into Russians. Because I wanted to put chickens. I used to have a backyard in my building. Long story. And so I was thinking about building one of those chicken coops. But there was like a whole pack of feral cats out there. So I was like, they're definitely going to get to those chickens. He goes, no, cat is very smart. You take one cat, you kill, you put next to chicken coop. The other cat, they never come again. I was like, these motherfuckers are crazy. You do not want to fuck with these people.
Oh, no, yeah. Bowie, thanks for the buck. It's been rumored that actual members of the State Department were participating in the pro-Palestinian protests in D.C., and that many people were climbing the White House fence. I know people were climbing the fence at night. I'm sure many State Department people were there because we know there's been some turmoil at the State Department over that. So it would not surprise me at all that a lot of staffers were there. Eddie Eider, you guys deserve to go far. Thanks for the $20. Thanks for the laugh, wisdom, and snark. LOL. Well, thank you. Thank you for the donation and the well wishes. Much. Thank you guys all for these Rumble rants. They are very, very helpful. We appreciate that very much. We got a couple more super chats and a couple more Rumble rants, but let's do our final segment of the show, and then obviously, folks, post-show Q&A tonight over on Rumble. Don't forget about that. Bill Maher gave a new rule monologue.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. Bill Maher's new rule monologue about the Israel war and how people who are opposed to genocide are really just haters of Western civilization. That's what it is. Opposition to genocide is really just code for I hate the West, according to Bill Maher.
The Middle East situation is nothing a little Marcus Aurelius couldn't cure.
Exactly. Let's take a look at this.
For all the progressives and academics who refer to Israel as an outpost of Western civilization like it's a bad thing, please note, Western civilization is what gave the world pretty much every goddamn liberal precept that liberals are supposed to adore.
Don't worry, I'm not going to cut this every 10 seconds here. But just his opening.
It's giving me a headache, yeah.
His opening exposes so much of the hypocrisy of liberals and liberalism. Now, he doesn't even sound like a liberal here. He sounds like a center-right neocon conservative here. He sounds like Bill Kristol here. He doesn't even sound like a liberal. But he doesn't realize, because he is so in his own bubble and in his own world, he doesn't even realize that just saying what you just said there exposes much of the hypocrisy of modern liberalism. Just in the way that Bernie Sanders' take on this issue exposes a lot of the hypocrisy of his brand of democratic socialism, or really, as some of our people in the chat have said, rightfully so, he's really more of a social democrat than a democratic socialist. There's a chauvinism about this that they don't even see. I don't even think Bill Maher realized that in his setup. He hasn't even gotten to his point yet. But even his setup, he exposes a lot of this.
Individual liberty, scientific inquiry, rule of law, religious freedom, women's rights, human rights, democracy, trial by jury, freedom of speech. Please, somebody stop us before we enlighten again. Wow. And since one can find all these concepts in today's Israel and virtually nowhere else in the Middle East, if anything, the world would be a better place if it had more Israels.
Oh,
of course,
wow. What a point that is. You look like you were going to interject something. Did you have anything?
No, it wasn't that. It's that this whole fucking monologue is driving me insane. I mean, how do you want to handle this? Are we playing this through and then commenting?
Yeah, we could play a bit more.
Let's play it.
We don't have the whole thing. We have about the first 3 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. Let's play it through and then we'll take it apart.
All right.
It had more Israels. Of course, this message falls on deaf ears to the current crop who reduce everything to being only victims or victimizers. So Israel is lumped in as the toxic fruit of the victimizing West. The irony being that all marginalized people live better today because of Western ideals, not in spite of them.
There's a very clear case of victim.
All right, hang on. Fine. Fine.
There's too much. If we let it go to the end, we'll never.
You're right. Okay. His ignorance of history is absolutely just mind-boggling. That's part of what's driving me crazy about this segment. So part of the reason I wanted to cover this is that he's encapsulating so much of the Zionist zeitgeist, the overall theory of the case that they're making, that you can answer that case by answering this monologue. I felt like it's valuable in that sense. It's also valuable in the sense of clarifying some of the conversations we've had on this show, because I found when this war first broke out, there were some people, I think, who misunderstood some of my critiques that overlap with some of what Bill Maher says here about social justice movements and their critiques of Western civilization. Some of what he has to say, and I mentioned with Douglas Murray, some of what he has to say. The core idea that holding Western civilization uniquely responsible for having a horrific past is historically illiterate is an idea that I agree with. And I think it's important to understand that, because you can't solve a problem if you misunderstand its roots. If you think that the cruelties of the state, cruelties of civilizations to weaker parties that can't defend themselves, if you think that that is a Western issue rather than a human nature issue, you are going to be very, very surprised when your post-Western civilization behaves the same way, because you have not really addressed what the problem is. The fact that arguably, particularly if you are a person with testicles, as I hear is the correct phrase for it today, arguably the Arab slave trade was the most brutal slave trade in the history of the world. And I say that because where they had slave markets, they had castration centers. It was just part of the process. You castrated the male slaves, and many of the slaves they took were from Africa and Europe as well. All of that is true, that the idea that you're going to present this notion that the world was a peaceful place until Europe came along, or Europe rose and began colonizing and they introduced slavery. Yeah, it's that core critique is correct, but that does not mean what he's concluding from it. The idea that all of these places have benefited from Western intervention. Have you heard of Africa? Have you heard of India? Have you heard of Hawaii? Have you heard of Vietnam? Have you heard of any of these places that have completely been devastated and destroyed by Western intervention? It's just an absolutely ridiculous argument to make. And we'll have the opportunity to get into this a little bit more as he gets more into what the West gave to the world in terms of the ideas that the West introduced. And this is the part of the critique that I somewhat overlap with some of what he's saying in, I'm a Westerner. I love the idea of freedom of speech and individual liberty and democracy, although, I mean, some of what he's saying was introduced in other cultures. But I will concede that primarily in the West did this tension between the state and the individual play out and lead to these ideas about human rights. What Maher is too ignorant to understand about that is that generally those ideas have only applied to a very small segment of society, an aristocracy, if you will. And in America, we've conflated the notion that because we extended voting rights to everybody in theory, that we got rid of that reality in practice, and we did not. The Greeks enfranchised the poor. We weren't the first people to do that. We weren't the first people to allow non-landowners to have the vote. That doesn't mean you're actually governing the society. There have been many republics and so-called democracies that were actually oligarchies and aristocracies with a vote. It was a vote that only counted among a certain segment of the society. And that is what we have historically been. So my argument against these movements is very different from Bill Maher's argument. My argument is that to throw out the good ideas that have been developed in the West, and ideas that many critics of the West actually embrace without realizing it, because many of their arguments are predicated on concepts that were developed within the Western schools of political theory. To throw out the West as irredeemable or foul, or to throw out those ideas, is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. For me, the argument is we need those ideas to apply to everyone. Not that we need those ideas to go away. And we have to recognize that there has been a small elite class of, yes, white men who have enjoyed that world, just like in ancient democracies. What do you think? The average Greek was sitting around talking about Aristotle's theories or Plato's Republic? That level of education was for a very small elite class. And so it is with us. When we talk about history, when you talk about the 60s, who do you think you're talking about? Who do you think was at Woodstock? The average person? The average person was fighting in Vietnam or working in a factory. The average person was not at Woodstock. You're talking about a very privileged, mostly white, middle and upper middle class segment of society that was a part of those discussions and conversations. Those people got to enjoy that freedom and that privilege and that experience. Most people did not. This is what Bill Maher misses. This is why this monologue is historically illiterate. Because, yes, a lot of these social justice movements ignore Western contributions and they go too far in minimizing the crimes of other civilizations. But that doesn't clean up our crimes. And that doesn't mean that we are not guilty of the things that we have done to other cultures and other civilizations.
Well, in his mind, it does. In his mind, the superiority, quote unquote, of the West.
Well, that's another thing. I would not assert superiority. Yeah, and let me just make that clear. I'm not saying the West is better.
No, that's why I put it in quotes, right? But I'm saying in his mind, he views Western superiority as a license to kill, as a license for the West to do whatever it wants to people whose values are quote-unquote inferior. But he goes on.
Martin Luther King used Henry David Thoreau's essay Civil Disobedience to help shape the civil rights movement. The UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights owes its core to Rousseau and Voltaire. Cleisthenes never showed up for a sexual harassment seminar. But without him, there's no democracy. The cop who murdered George Floyd got 21 years for violating his Fourth Amendment rights, an idea we got directly from John Locke, who no one in college would ever study anymore because he's so old and so white and so dead. So Western. Yes, that's how simple the woke are. It's never about ideas.
No. That is your straw man.
Right.
That is your straw man that you are putting up because you cannot have the actual argument on the merits of what is going on in Gaza right now. There's a genocide going on, and you don't care. And the only way you can win that argument is by straw manning everybody who opposes genocide in Gaza as just having this hard-on for Western civilization.
Right.
It's such a cheap and sleazy and just really abhorrent monologue. But we have more.
Is. If it was, would they be cheering on Hamas for their liberation? Liberation? To do what? More freely preside over a country where there are no laws against sexual harassment, spousal rape, domestic violence, homophobia,
Again, there you
honor
have it.
killings, or child marriage? This is who liberals think you should stand with?
No. You stand with people who are being genocided because they're being genocided. Again, straw man, they're standing with Hamas. No, standing with the innocent civilians of Gaza who have been genocided for the past month and who are going to be genocided further until somebody steps in. And you're making the argument that we shouldn't step in. Why? Because they don't have laws against spousal abuse and all this stuff. Once again, you are saying right now that because you consider Western values superior to Middle Eastern values, that we ought not care when Western liberal democracies genocide Middle Eastern countries that don't share our values. It's exactly what you're saying. And this casts that infamous confrontation on Real Time, what was it, 8 or 9 years ago, between Bill Maher and Sam Harris and Ben Affleck in a whole new light. Because the whole time that went down, Bill Maher and Sam Harris were on the same page critiquing views that were widely espoused and held in the Muslim world. They cited the poll that said 78% of British Muslims wanted the Danish cartoonist jailed for drawing a cartoon image of Muhammad. And Bill Maher and Sam Harris went down the list criticizing, quote-unquote, ideas. And then Ben Affleck said, this is gross, this is racist. And Sam Harris countered, we're not criticizing Muslims as people, we are criticizing Islamic ideas. And Ben Affleck was not interested in hearing that. And at the time, because Bill Maher had a relatively good track record at that point on foreign policy, he was against the Iraq war from day one. Almost no one in the media was. I said, you know what? I took him at his word. I said, no, actually, I was on Team Maher and Team Harris there. I said, no, actually, Bill Maher and Sam Harris are not criticizing Muslims as people. They are only criticizing Muslim ideas, is Islamic ideas. Pardon me. Turns out now that this happened, you can see that whatever you think about Ben Affleck, he sniffed them out for what they actually were. Because now that Muslim people, not ideas, people are being slaughtered, Bill Maher has nothing at all to say about it, not a care in the world for these people. Why? Because he links Islamic values to Muslim people. So all this bullshit that Sam Harris was saying, well, we're not criticizing people, we're just criticizing ideas. Bullshit. You're a fucking liar, and so is this douchebag, Bill Maher. Because now that the people are being attacked, you're saying we ought not give a shit about them because they have what, in our mind, are bad ideas. So it just proves what liars they were back then.
Right, and let me make clear, I am a Westerner. I like a lot of the ideas that have been developed by the West. A lot of my thinking is rooted in it. But to use the example of one of the greatest cultural products of the West, Star Trek, I'm a Prime Directive guy. You leave other people the fuck alone. And in terms of superiority, I don't know, we have an epidemic of our kids cutting themselves, deleting themselves, depression. Everybody's on medication of various kinds, including mood stabilizing medication. So I don't think we're really in any position to tell anybody else about what the best path is to have a happy life, to have a happy society, to have a happy family. This is my culture. And these are the things that I believe in. Freedom of speech, the rights of the individual over the state. But hey, that's none of my business what other people want to believe. And it's certainly, even if you morally have objections to the belief of a culture, it doesn't justify a genocide. And that is the ground that people like Bill Maher want to shift this to. They want to shift it to an interrogation of the superiority of Western civilization. And these are the same exact liberals who, if you give them a historical example of, say, the British in India making very similar pronouncements about how they're bringing civilization to the savages, would never see themselves that way. They sound exactly like those people.
Yeah, no, he is putting the societal norms of Gaza on trial, as if that's at all fucking relevant to what's going on. All right, we have a little more of this.
Women there should be so lucky as to get colonized by anybody else. And for the record, the Jews didn't colonize Israel or anywhere ever except maybe Boca Raton.
Which, you know, it's not a bad joke, but it's simply not true.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Gaza wasn't seized by Israel like India or Kenya was by the British Empire, and the partitioning of the region wasn't decided by Jews, but by a vote of the United Nations in 1947, with everyone from Russia to Haiti voting for it. But apparently they don't teach this at Drag Queen Story Hour anymore.
Yeah, I mean, just incredible.
Okay, so this is the next thing I want to point out. Even if you accept Bill Maher's argument on its own terms, right, that Western culture is superior because it has better ideas and institutions of democratic governance and the rights of the individual and freedom of speech, Israel is not that country at all. So let's take a look at a video that went around a little bit this week of what happened to Hasidic Jews who were, or Orthodox, I think they might just be Orthodox, protesting for the Palestinians. Let's see what happened to them.
Oh, look at that free speech in action right there.
Oh, yeah. It's the Jeffersonian ideal there. Look at him. He punched him in the face. Oh. A bastion of Western values. What else is going on over there? Oh, Israel police boss threatens to send anti-war protesters to Gaza on buses. Kobi Shabtai says there will be zero tolerance for protests in support of Gaza and Israel.
Oh, that's Colby Shabtai. That's why he quit our Patreon. I was wondering. Why he stopped I knew that name ringed a bell. I knew that rang a bell. Colby Shabtai. Fucking A.
Oh, that motherfucker. He used to give us, he used to super chat every show.
Yeah, right, exactly.
This fucking guy. That's where he went. He didn't like our take. He didn't.
I was like, where the hell did that name come from? Why is that sticking with me? Yeah.
You know, he thought because I didn't think that men should swim against women that I'd be on board with genocide.
Yeah,
apparently.
Exactly. Yeah, you let him down.
So yeah. I mean, this is Bill Maher. He considers himself a classical liberal. No, Bill, I'm a classical liberal. You're a fucking conservative. There is absolutely no daylight between you and Ben Shapiro. This is just the right wing argument, and this is why, going back to, I knew this was going to come up again. I mentioned it earlier in the show. Very often, conservatives will have a somewhat correct diagnosis that they take to a batshit conclusion. There's a kernel of truth in what he's saying, in my opinion, regarding the excesses of some of these theoretical frameworks regarding pretending that no other culture had horrific histories and crimes in its past other than the West. And I don't think it's useful to distort the past in that way. But it's also not useful to distort the past in this traditional Western chauvinist colonialist way, where you're making just insanely historically illiterate observations as if the West just brought peace and freedom and democracy everywhere that it went. I mean, it's a fucking joke. It's a joke. And even within our own society, I believe we need to take these best of Western values and extend them to everybody. And I think the best social and most successful social justice movements have been predicated on that theory, which he correctly points out by saying that MLK took some inspiration from Emerson. That is true. And I agree with that core part of it.
But also, that's not on trial in the way that he
of
says
course.
it is.
It's a straw man.
It's straw
yes.
manning. I mean,
yes,
you're talking
right.
about some
right.
undergrads and some grad students at some
right.
universities. 66% of the American people want a ceasefire.
Right.
Not because
right.
66% of them have a hatred for John Locke.
Right.
That's absurd.
And
it's
that's
a ridiculous argument because he's too much of a fucking coward to actually make the argument he wants to make, which is, I don't like Palestinians and I don't care if they die.
That is an excellent point, because part of what's so maddening about this monologue is that it feels so disconnected from the subject of the monologue, right? It feels like he wants to drag in this interrogation of culture war issues that don't belong here.
Right.
Right. And like, what does this have to do really with genociding a population? I mean, you're just making this classic colonialist argument to a degree that's just, it's just insane. It's just crazy. It keeps reminding me, I keep hearing, well, it's the most moral army in the world. They're giving them warnings. I saw somebody say they gave them 4 hours today to get south. What other army would do that? Yeah, no, pick up millions of people and evacuate them south. It keeps reminding me of that great scene in Gandhi where, there was this horrific incident where they just opened fire on a crowd of peaceful protesters, and the general who gave the order was put on trial. And he says, I was prepared to offer help to any who applied. And the judge says, how does a 6-year-old child who's lost his mother apply for help? Right. I mean, that's what this reminds me of. Right. Like how it really, no, but we're giving them time to get. How are they supposed to get south? How are they supposed to do that exactly? With no fuel, no water, no food. How are they supposed to do this? And Bill Maher's going on there. He wants to fucking talk about the culture wars on college campuses, which you're right. It's a straw man. That's why the monologue feels almost weird. Like, why are you even talking about this in this context?
No, he thinks he can use that to litigate this. He thinks he can use the culture war to litigate genocide. And he's counting on his audience being dumb enough to fall for it, because most of his audience... Right, but most of his audience are not dumb enough to actually swallow that, it's okay that Israel is wiping out Gaza, right? Most of his audience would not be on board with that. So he has to couch it in, I mean, should we really give a shit about the people of Gaza? Because really what's on trial here
women
is
don't have
Western
rights
civilization. Yeah, women don't have rights there. They'd be lucky to be colonized. I mean, think of what an obscene
lucky
thing
to
to
be
say
colonized. That's what I'm saying. Like, that monologue is psychopathic. It's absolutely in light of what the actual events he's commenting on are. The superficial nature of that monologue, the smugness, the flipness. Even if you want to make this argument, you really think this is fucking funny, you sick piece of shit?
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Absolutely. Leprechaun Alley, 1999. Epstein had to have played a role in this setup, particularly because they knew they would lose the narrative. Well, he's dead, isn't he? Isn't he? I hope so. This certainly isn't beyond Netanyahu to do. Look what Mossad did with Stuxnet. All right. I'll take that. As a comment, thank you, Leprechaun Alley. Appreciate that.
I've been hearing, I didn't even know about this, that RFK was on the plane too.
Was he? Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know about this, but I saw like an article about it.
I
thought people were kidding when I first heard that. But,
maybe Pasta can ask him when next time he sees him.
Yeah.
That'd be a good question. Pasta, he can go viral with that. Joe Cavara, thanks for the $5. When can we stop pretending Biden will make it to next week, let alone a year? Is a walking death rattle already. I mean, I like I said, when the Hunter thing came about, I said this is an opportunity for them to, get him off the ticket. I still think that might be the plan, especially with these polls. I mean, it's pretty much over. Lloyd Tackwell, thanks for the $2. Is the Jewish rap CD available in the merch store? Yeah, we should sell Menachem mixtapes. That'll be good. Justin B, thanks for the $5. The Green Party uses Union Print-on-Demand merch company, FII. You should look them up. Well, why don't you send me a link, Justin? I'm assuming you're our caller. Why don't you, send me a link, and I would happily look into that if they print on demand. That's the thing is it has to be print on demand because we don't have the administrative capacity to oversee that. Gulmaro Ochoa Montoro, I like that name. El Privilegio de Amar, 1998 to 1999. All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Sid Artivicious, Mar is the two girls, one cup of potatoes. Yeah. That's a good one. The Proletarian Revolution and the Renegade Bernie, says China Shell. Thank you, China Shell. Appreciate that. Thank you guys for these donations.
Is that your band?
Yeah, exactly. T-Bone 316, thanks for the $5. Good evening, boys. By the way, Norman has been pumping videos on his YouTube channel. Follow his channel, folks. Yeah, follow Norman Finkelstein's YouTube channel. Also invite Scott Ritter on. He doesn't sleep. Oh, no, he's got a lot of energy. All right, yeah, that might be something. Norm Finkelstein, it has been very busy. He's been very busy. He's doing a lot of stuff as he should.
I might be seeing him on Tuesday.
Yeah, Norman Finkelstein is leading a march, actually, on Tuesday. He's going to speak outside of Chuck Schumer's building, challenging him to a debate. Libertarian Socialist, thanks for the $1. What are your thoughts on Jackson Hinkle being an op to sabotage the pro-Palestinian movement? I do not believe that he is an op to sabotage
I don't see any signs of that.
I don't see any signs of that. In fact, he's gained almost 1 million Twitter followers since this happened, and a lot of the stuff that gets out there, thanks to him. I mean, if he's sabotaging it, I don't see how he's sabotaging it. I mean, a lot of that stuff I get from
he's doing
from
a bad
feed.
job.
Yeah, bad job sabotaging it for sure.
It's like the producers.
Yeah, right, exactly. Mac Truck. Thanks for the $10. Bill Maher and Bill Crystal sitting in a tree. Yeah. Haven't heard that song in a while. Thank you for the donation. Okay, we got some more super chats. Last call for super chats, folks. We're going to end the show after these super chats and head to Rumble for the Q&A. So here, I'll put the channel link up on the screen, rumble.com/Do Dissidents. Head over there to our channel, hit the follow button, and you will see this live stream right at the top of the feed. Dave Delarai, thanks for the $10. You have to play with your meow meow kitty for at least 15 minutes a day, or that's what I hear from Galaxy Jackson, who's a dog owner, by the way, because he's smart. I have cats myself, and you are supposed to entertain them, but they do entertain themselves quite a bit.
They do.
As well.
They do. It depends on how old they are, too.
That's
Past a certain age, they just want to be left the fuck alone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like people. They age like people do.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Axel, if one believes that human rights are contingent upon beliefs that align with oneself, one misses the point of human rights. Absolutely.
Very well said. Who is that? Who said that?
Yeah, it's a quote.
That's a great quote.
He didn't attribute that to anybody. Yeah, I'd like to know who that's from. But yes, excellent quote. Susker, thanks for the $5. I think it would be safe and effective for our audience to perform their daily condemnations of hummus. Yes, if they haven't already. Absolutely. Yes, obviously we condemn hummus, especially Sabra hummus, since that's made in Israel. That's the worst kind.
Boycott that kind of hummus.
Yeah, boycott that hummus. But yeah, all hummus in general, not a fan of. I've always been a Baba Ganoush guy myself, and I appreciate that choice more and more.
I like hummus.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right, but it's nothing like a good Baba Ganoush. A good Baba Ganoush is amazing. The olive oil and the parsley. Oh, man, that's good. Tyson, thanks for the $10. What percentage of Gaza citizens supporting hummus would justify Israel to take these current actions fighting back like this? 51, 60, 80, does it have to be 100? No, there's a difference between civilians and combatants, right? I mean, this is getting into the slippery slope that Bill Maher was talking about, right? I mean, you have to differentiate between civilians and combatants in war. Otherwise, every war will devolve into a genocidal campaign.
Right.
And there has not been an election in Palestine for, what, 17 years? Is that the number now? Yeah.
Right, since what, 2005?
Yeah, 2000, I think it was 6.
6?
Oops, what did I do? Okay, I got that one good. Meter Dreams, thanks for the $1.99. As a gay man, just let me wear what I want, and I'm smiles. All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
You do you. You do you.
You do you. Yassine Miller, thanks for the $5. You said it, Russ. Thank you. You leave other people, other countries alone. That's the root cause of every problem in the world. Just leave them alone. Yes.
That's it. It's none of our business.
Dwayne Vogel, Bill Maher should be forced to watch Raoul Peck's Exterminate All the Brutes on a loop for the rest of his miserable life, like Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. Yeah, Hedges just borrowed that title for a recent piece that he wrote.
Well, you know what I'd like to see with Bill Maher? If you ever saw the original Twilight Zone movie, they had this was the one where the actors got killed because John Landis called in the helicopter too low. But it was one basically about this virulent racist who got put in Vietnam and got put in all of these situations where he was those people. That's what should happen to Bill Maher. Bill Maher should have the experience of what it's like to see things from the perspective of a Gazan. I'd like to see what monologues he would be doing then. Like, all of this, we got into this with Norm. You got to be careful in East Berlin here, how you talk about this. But part of the reason a military campaign like this is bound to fail in its objectives is because you're just creating more people who are going to join Hamas or a group like Hamas.
Well, that was the whole critique of the war on terror. They say the war on terror, and you end up radicalizing people and creating, people who are going to fight back. And like I said, I'll say this. Russell mentioned East Berlin. I've said this on every show, not because I have to, but because this is the way I feel. I feel all violence is tragic and all war is obscene. I do not glorify or celebrate violence against anybody. So these arguments are not meant to celebrate or promote violence. It is a simple fact of a matter where you murder 16 family members of a person. What does that person have to live for at that point?
Exactly.
What do they have to live for except to exact revenge upon you?
What would you do?
Exactly.
What would you
just
do? We all
horrible dynamics.
Yeah, we all watch these revenge movies. And everyone gets it, right? Right? What happens in a Mel Gibson movie? His family gets wiped out, and you identify with that as a viewer, and you take a lot of enjoyment in watching him take his revenge. So what do you think it's like for these people? Right? Like what do you think if that happened to you? Look at the poor man that Keaton filmed in Albany. 16 family members. Like, how does that not radicalize you? And, we've said this. What do you think happens in a prison? The toughest, craziest people rise to the top.
Right. They get elevated. Right.
They get elevated. Right. So you combine a desire for revenge with a prison-like circumstance, and hummus is what you end up with.
Right. No, it's a great analogy, and I've thought of it too. They're basically a prison gang, right? And a prison gang has power relative to the other prisoners, but they don't have power relative to the warden, right? And so they don't have the kind of agency that people put upon them when it comes to expecting, certain actions. And like I said, I do not celebrate the death of anybody or violence against anybody. Of course not. But you have to look at this the way we looked at our reaction to 9/11 as having radicalized new generations of particularly young men in regions around the world whose societies we have leveled. That ends well for no one. It ends well for no one. It's a horror. It's a downward spiral. It's an absolute horror show. RJ Ramrod, thank you for the $4.99. Speaking of Jackson Galaxy, he's got a great book on ways to transform your living space to turn outdoor cats into indoor cats. Catisfy to satisfy. Thank you, RJ. DC, thanks for the $5. U.S.-Israel foreign policy is basically Stan's Uncle Jimbo from South Park's way of justifying illegal poaching. They're coming right for us. Yeah, exactly. I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the Mexican staring frog, right? Yeah. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. 1982 filming of Twilight Zone, the movie, killed 3, including actor Vic Morrow, father of Oscar-nominated actress Jennifer Jason Leigh.
I will do you one better than that. It killed the children of either Steven Spielberg's babysitter or housekeeper or Frank Marshall, like one of them. You want to see what fucking scumbags these people in Hollywood are? I actually have a book about that case called Outrageous Conduct that shows how they all just covered up for John Landis. The children were on set way beyond what the legal hours that children were supposed to be working was. Anybody who's directed, it's really a cautionary tale because you could understand how that, I mean, I don't think I'd ever be that irresponsible. But John Landis, his career was very hot when that happened. And he kept telling them to bring in the helicopters lower because he wanted the shot. And the special effect, they were working with live explosions. And they knew it was dangerous. They knew it was against regulations. But it's such a competitive industry. Nobody wants to be the guy that told John Landis at the height of his career, no, you can't do this. And the blade came off and chopped Victor Morrow's head off. Yeah. Outrageous Conduct. I would recommend it. It'll give you a lot of insight into who these people in Hollywood really are, including Spielberg, because that was a Spielberg-produced film. They moved Frank Marshall out of the country so that he couldn't be subpoenaed.
Wow. All right. We got one more here. Jeff Berg. Keanu kicks the dog. Thank you, Jeff. All right, folks. That is our show. We are going to move over to Rumble now for our post-show Q&A. We have a couple of different callers on the line. We just had a third who just hung up, but we have two and then possibly a third caller. If you would like to submit questions, do so in the Rumble chat at Due Dissidence, so Jake fields them. Obviously, Rumble rants take priority since they're easier to see and they help keep the show going. But if you have questions for us over in the Rumble chat, you can post those over the next 5 minutes. If you are a patron, paid Substack subscriber, or paid local subscriber, and you would like to call in and ask us a question over the audio or over the camera, you can do that now. You have the call-in link. Everybody, rumble.com/Due Dissidence if you want to keep the party going and hang out with us for the post game. Otherwise, we will see you all back here on Wednesday night. That is Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. Post game starts after a 5-minute intermission over on Rumble. So if you're going there, we'll see you there. If not, we'll see you next time. Until whenever we see you again, be safe and be well.
Are we the baddies?
Courage!
Please clap.